Hi and welcome to the Malat cookery channel. Today we're going to be making spaghetti and meatballs, and the spice blend from the Malat range we're going to be using today is Italian seasoning. For those of you that are not customers of Malat, you're going to have to substitute that Italian seasoning with a teaspoon of good quality Italian herb mix, 2 cloves of garlic which have been minced, and also about 1/4 of a white onion which has been diced. You'll also need some salt and pepper. The thing with the Italian seasoning from Malat is an all-in-one spice blend, so it's got everything added, including the seasoning. As usual, a full list of ingredients will be given at the end of the video, so let's have a look at those ingredients and anything else we're going to need for today's recipe. Right, so what we'll do is we'll have a look at the meatballs first, the ingredients for the meatballs, and then we'll move on to the sauce later. So 400 grams of ground beef, 200 grams of pork sausage meat. If you don't eat pork, use 600 grams of ground beef. Take 200 grams out and put it through a food processor so you get this kind of consistency, and the mixture of the two gives a really nice texture to the meatball. I've got 20 grams of freshly grated Parmesan cheese, 40 grams of white breadcrumbs, 2 medium-sized free-range eggs which have been whisked, and 1 tablespoon, about 7 grams of Malat Italian seasoning. So all we need to do now is take a large mixing bowl and mix all of the ingredients for the meatballs. So the best way I've found for meatballs is to have a baking tray, have your mixture, and a bowl with some olive oil in there. And what we need to do is just coat your hands in the olive oil, take some of the mixture, and then roll that in your hands. And I'm looking for about a 2 centimetre diameter ball for each meatball. And just place them on to the tray and just carry on. So the next thing to do now is just to brown the meatballs on the outside. I've got a fairly deep pan because I'm going to use this pan for cooking the sauce in as well. We don't want to clean it out. We want to use all the flavour that will be left in the pan to add to the sauce. So there's about 3 tablespoons of olive oil in the pan. That's come up to heat now. So we just want to fry off these meatballs in batches. So that's the last of the meatballs cooked. So these have been cooking for about 20 minutes. They'll continue to cook further in the sauce, but they're nicely browned at this stage. So the next thing we want to do is prepare the sauce, and we're going to prepare the sauce in the pan that we've cooked the meatballs in. Right, so the ingredients for the sauce, and this is enough to make pasta sauce for at least 4 people. So if you're making for less, then obviously just adjust the amount that you need. So I've got two 500-gram packs of passata sauce. So this is basically just sieved tomatoes. 1 tablespoon of the Malat Italian seasoning, that's about 7 grams. Again, if you're not using the Malat spice range, then you'll need at least a teaspoon of good quality Italian herbs, salt and pepper, 2 cloves of garlic minced, and about 1/4 of a white onion diced. Also going to need 2 tablespoons of tomato puree and 2 tablespoons of plain flour or all-purpose flour. So this is the pan that we use to actually fry off the meatballs. It's still got all of the oil in there, all of the flavours that have come from the meatballs themselves. So the first thing we want to do is we want to take the tomato puree and just place that in. And we just really want to just cook out some of the sharpness of the tomato puree. So that's been cooking now for about a minute. Next thing we want to do is add the Malat Italian seasoning. Or if you're not using that, then this is when you would add the onion, garlic and Italian herbs. Again, we just want to cook this through for about a minute. Next thing we want to do is to add the flour. So we'll cook this out for about a minute, and this will thicken up that sauce. So basically just making a roux with this. So that's the plain or all-purpose flour actually cooked through. It's taken about a minute. And now we want to add the passata sauce, just a little bit at a time. So that's now produced a fantastic Italian sauce, nice and thick, packed with flavour. Obviously you've got the flavour from the Malat Italian seasoning as well as from the meatballs through the oil. So we're just going to put that onto a very gentle simmer for about 10 minutes. Okay, so our sauce has now been simmering for about 15 minutes. It's at this point, before we add the meatballs, that we need to adjust the sauce if needed with regard to seasoning. So it's very important that we taste the sauce. Okay, so that needs a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, some seasoning. I'm also going to add about ½ a teaspoon of sugar, just to try and counteract some of that acidity. Now obviously that's optional, but I think it would definitely benefit this sauce. So if you are going to re-season, just allow it to cook for a couple of minutes first before retasting. And obviously when you're going to taste again, use a fresh spoon, not the same one you've used before. Okay, that's much better. Now we're going to add the meatballs. Okay, so I'm going to allow this to simmer now for about ½ an hour, and it should be done. You can add a little bit more water if need be. So I'm using dried spaghetti. Rule of thumb is normally between 80 and 100 grams of dried pasta per person. always follow the manufacturer's instructions on the packet. For this one, it's salty boiling water and cook for 9 minutes. So just thought I'd share with you guys a little tip for anyone that's got really young children that struggle to eat spaghetti. So when our twins were very small, when they just started to eat at the dining room table, we used to make homemade spaghetti and meatballs, which they absolutely loved, but they would eat the meatballs and then struggle with the spaghetti and get bored and leave most of it in the dish. So I used to do this. I just thought I'd share this little tip with you if you've got that sort of situation. So you take your homemade meatball, you take some dried pasta and snap it in half, and basically just push the pasta through the meatball, so maybe 5 or 6 strands per meatball. And then the meatball would then get dropped into a saucepan with the sauce and obviously be allowed to cook through. And what you end up with, and what our kids used to call them, are meatball spiders. So that way when they pick the meatball up, they've got the spaghetti attached. And pasta and meatballs with that lovely, rich, thick Italian sauce. Just serve with a little bit of freshly ground black pepper and some freshly grated Parmesan cheese. Homemade spaghetti and meatballs, really simple to do and packed with flavour. One thing I didn't mention before is if you're going to do this little trick for the kids where you actually push the dried pasta through the meatball spiders, then what I forgot to mention is just add a little bit of extra water to the sauce itself, so about 50 mils of water, because that will be absorbed by the dried pasta. Please subscribe to the channel, and as usual, if you've enjoyed the video, hit the like button. So thanks for watching.